recruiting, hiring, sorry. So really just gonna talk, I'll let him do his thing, but he's gonna talk about, transferable life skills you guys are developing as student athletes and kind of how it plays a role in the real world. Okay? Those that have been here understand that like a big part of what we do is outside of baseball, wanting to develop you for life after baseball. It's easy to intertwine your identity as just a baseball player, and we want to try and unravel that before you leave here. So everybody's in a different seat. I know we got fifth year guys, grad guys, and we've got freshmen. So everybody's going to have a different perspective of this information. But regardless, at some point, baseball's coming to an end, and you want to know what type of skill set you've developed and how it can apply to real world jobs. So I'll leave it at that.
Sure. Thank you. Coach, thanks for your introduction. Guys, thanks for having me. Thanks for coming out tonight. I know that it's probably been a long day for you. Most of your peers, their day's already over and you're still here. One thing I do just want to say, just real quick off the top, Coach talked about there is going to be something in this for everybody, whether you're a freshman or a senior. There's going to be some components of this that apply to everybody. I know the underclassmen usually hear, career development, job fairs, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't apply to me. It does. In fact, a lot of this probably applies to you more than anybody, because if you're implementing some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about now, it's going to make life easier for you at the end. So speaking of the end, I love what I do for a living. Okay, I really do. I've had, since I started this company, many people call me, reach out to me, talking about, listen, I just graduated. What now? I don't know what to do. Like literally like a panic mode. Like what the fuck? Like I don't know what's going on. One of them actually was a teammate of yours last year. He graduated. He called me over the summer. Had no idea what he was going to do. I basically, what I'm about to go over with you guys, I went over with him. We talked for 45 minutes, an hour. I walked him through the whole process. Told him the skills that he's developed. I told him how to prep for an interview, what to do following the interview, all those kind of things. And he got a job in the profession that he went for. And luckily it worked out for him. Like I said, I don't mind doing that. But what I would prefer would be that you pay attention tonight and implement these things on your own, so you don't have to have that one-on-one, and you're able to move forward and find success on your own. You are acquiring real-life transferable skills. You may not be aware of that, but your student-athlete experience is your internship. And if you can convey that properly to a hiring manager, you can demonstrate that not only is it on par with a traditional internship, it may even supersede it. So we're going to talk about what those skills are, and those skills that you're acquiring are your work ethic, your time management, your teamwork, your communication, motivation, and resilience to those. I know you may not understand how you're acquiring these things and how they're transferable. That's what I want to kind of illustrate for you here today. So your work ethic. I saw on the podcast, I think it was Dana White, talking about he wants to give his son like that dog, like that killer instinct, that people talk about, right? You have that, okay? You have all of these in abundance, all of these skills. And these are the skills that if you look at a job posting, these are the skills that employers are looking for. And you have all of them in abundance. And when I talk about Dana White, like that work ethic, that you don't understand, like the stuff that you take for granted when it comes to work ethic, like just showing up every day and just being available, right? They say like the best ability is availability. It's not as common as you think, just because you take it for granted because you want to be here. I'm telling you, in the corporate world, dudes call out for all kinds of crazy shit. Like I'm looking at it like, what do you mean you can't come to work? You got the sniffles or this and that. Like you just show up. You show up every day. And if you continue to do that over a long period of time, that's how employers see you as a valuable employee, and that's how you begin to take off. That's how you really start to separate yourself from your peers. They just don't want to work. They don't. And only 7% of high school athletes play at the collegiate level. So for you to have separated yourself to that degree, you have to have an incredible work ethic. Your time here has given you unmatched time management skills. like I kind of started off saying, your day probably started earlier than most of your peers. And you're here now, so it's probably ending later than most of your peers, right? In order to be able to do that, while also maintaining your academic eligibility, which also you have to maintain at a higher level than most students to be eligible to play, to keep your playing eligibility, that's another thing that's going to separate you, because you have to maintain certain GPAs that they don't have to, okay? And when you're in a corporate environment, time management is so critical, especially in entry-level roles. You're going to have to like perform your daily tasks. You're going to get pulled away from it for special projects. You're going to have to go to trainings, and all of these things can be extremely overwhelming for somebody who doesn't know how to properly manage their time. So that's an extremely valuable skill. Teamwork of all these is probably the one where if you're looking at these, you're probably thinking, how the hell is that going to help me? They're all important, but I'm going to kind of put this one on a different level because you may not see it. That's as important, if not more important than most. Like right off the bat, you have to be coachable, right? Again, it's going to be a new role. You're not going to know everything. You're going to have to be open to constructive criticism, and you're able to do those things. But more importantly, I think than that is company culture, right? Coach, I'm sure, has a set of ways that he wants things done around here, and that builds this team culture. And just by being a part of that, you're buying into it. Many of you are helping to build and cultivate that culture. There's a leadership component that comes with that as well. And that's extremely valuable to employers. They love talking about their company culture, and they love people who are going to build and cultivate that culture. All right? I was in a leadership position prior to coming here. I was at my old job for like 25 years. All right? And some of the things that happened, it was apparent who didn't come from kind of like a sports background, and I wanted to like throw objects at them. Like a phone would be ringing, and they would just let it ring because it wasn't their turn to answer it. Or I would give out like a 15-page Excel document, and you get 3 pages, you get 3 pages, you know, on down the line. And the good teammates, if they got done ahead of time, they would look at somebody else who maybe wasn't done yet and say, can I help you? So, you know, we all need to get these 15 pages done. Just because my page is done doesn't mean it's done. And people that are looking at it like, well, you know, that's not my job. That's the worst phrase that you can possibly say, right? That's not my job. In your environment, there's no such thing as that's not my job. If you're not working collectively together to achieve your goal doesn't get achieved. Right? So when you bring that mentality to a corporate environment, it's extremely valuable. Right? Communication skills, preparation breeds confidence. All right? And just the way that you're wired, you're not really going to approach much without being prepared, right? You want to go into a game without practicing or watching film or those kind of things. And that level of preparation, when you're doing that on a day in and day out basis, is going to allow you to articulate subject matter in a way that's going to be received well because you're speaking with confidence, because you're prepared. Another part of that is a lot of people don't like having difficult conversations, whether it be with, you know, an authority figure, a boss, a supervisor, a director. You should be accustomed to having those conversations, whether it's with a coach about your role on a team or playing time, whether it's with a professor about travel time, right? I know you're going to Carolina and Virginia in a couple weeks. You're going to have to talk to your professors about what you need to do to make up for that time, what assignments are going to be missed, and all of those different kinds of things. So just by being comfortable having those conversations is going to be something, again, that separates you from your peers. I keep talking about the same things, and that's what I want you to take away from this, is the little things that you can be doing to separate yourself. All right? And that's what's going to be important as you move forward here. The last two are going to kind of start to run together, motivation and resiliency. Companies want to hire somebody who they know wants to be there long-term, who wants to achieve upward mobility, right? And people who do that are goal-oriented, right? They're self-starters. I would guess most of you, probably as early as middle school, 7th, 8th grade, started setting baseball-related goals, right? I want to play baseball in high school. You get to high school, you're a freshman, I want to play varsity as a freshman. Sophomore year, I want to be all Catholic, all public, whatever it is. Junior year, I want to get a scholarship, right? Then you get the scholarship, then you get here, that whole process starts all over. I'm a freshman, I want to start. I'm a sophomore, I'm going to lead the team in ERA, batting average, whatever the case may be. Those goals keep continuing to grow. That shouldn't stop just because your athletic career ends. It's just a different set of goals. I've been here a year, I want to be a supervisor, I want to be a director, I want to make X amount of money, right? You just transfer what the goal is. One of the reasons why so many entry-level roles have a high turnover, and it's kind of why I started this business. I was putting people into a high turnover position. And I had a friend of mine who was a Division II basketball coach in the city. He was an assistant at the time. He's now the head coach. And he would often call me at the end, around graduation time, yo, Grug, I have this kid graduated. He doesn't really know what he wants to do. Can you help him out? And I would get him a job. And when I tell you the high turnover rate, like within 3 months, typically in this role, within 3 months, I would say 40 to 50% of the people, if not higher, were gone within 3 months. By a year, that number was probably 65%. The student athletes that I brought in far exceeded those retention rates. In fact, there was none. None of them, not one. And I probably got 6 or 7 of them jobs. Not one of them left or quit before being there for a really long time. All right? Your sport, baseball, you hear the old adage all the time, right? 3 out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer. Your sport is predicated on failure, on overcoming adversity. You're not going to be one of those guys that quits in the first 3 to 6 months. It's just innately not in you. That is an extremely valuable asset to a company. It's very, very expensive for companies to have to replace new hires and to retrain them. So when they hire a former student athlete and somebody who can convey to them throughout the interview process their motivation and their resiliency skills and their desire to be there long term, that makes you a very desirable candidate and somebody that they want to bring into their organization because they know that you're going to stick around. So now we kind of have a pretty firm grasp on some of the transferable skills, some of the things that we're good at. Let's talk about now how we're going to start to begin to put those things in place to set you up for long-term success. We're going to start with career fairs. So just real quick before I forget the date, because I've been trying to memorize it all day. I see a lot of you guys got notes. That's awesome. Write this date down, September 28th. That's your next career fair. I was talking to Coach beforehand. If you have practice, I'm not telling you it's an excused absence.
But in January?
January, I'm sorry, what did I say? I'm sorry, thanks Coach. January 28th, sorry. January 28th is the next career fair here. Most schools have 2 a year. So if there's a conflict here, maybe the one in the fall will work better. But you absolutely should be attending your career fairs. Again, to what I talked earlier, I want my freshmen and sophomores to listen up right now. All right? Before you go to the career fairs, you need to do some research. All right? Has anyone been to one yet? Nobody? All right, we got to work on that. Like I said, around the schedule if we can. They're hectic. There's probably going to be over 100 companies there. This is one of the bigger ones in the area. I used to love coming to Westchester's. Westchester and St. Joe's probably have the 2 best in the area. They're the biggest. They get a strong turnout, and I've actually hired people who came to that event. But it's hectic as you can imagine if you don't have a plan. So what I would suggest is going to career services and finding out who's going to be there. They'll have some type of list of the companies that are going to be there. Identify 5 to 10 that you could see yourself working for, whether it's because they have a strong reputation within your major, whether you know that they kind of align with your core values, Or maybe you just know somebody that works there and told you they pay really well or they have a strong company culture. Whatever the reason is, but pick like 5 to 10 of them, all right? If you go to 5 to 10 companies a year, twice a year, for the next 4 years, now you have 40 to 80 of those little interactions, okay? And each one of those interactions is going to be kind of like a little mini interview, okay? It's like reps, right? The more reps you do, the better you are at your trade. When you go to an actual interview, you're going to be much more comfortable in that environment. Because the person, it's literally like a table like this, and the dude standing there, hey, how you doing? You know, nice to meet you, whatever. The more the person at that table is a hiring manager. They're somebody who can directly influence your career path. So you can, especially if you start doing it early, the same people come back every year. So you can start to build like a relationship with them. But while you're doing that, the questions they're asking, you're going to start to perfect your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch is kind of how you answer that, tell me a little bit about yourself question, right? You start to get a cadence on what that's going to look like for you, how you're going to answer that question. And they'll ask you some other questions, you know, about your major, what you want to do, all those different kinds of things. But you'll be a lot more comfortable in that environment. And the other thing is, like I started to touch on, is you start to build relationships. If you're seeing the same company and the same people at that company, you may be able to build a rapport with somebody who can hire you, okay? So, for example, I told you I hired somebody. This kid came up, he was well-dressed, he was confident, he was articulate, he asked all the right questions. I knew I liked that kid. He gave me his resume, I gave him a business card. By the time I got back to my office, he had sent me an email thanking me for my time. It was a pleasure to meet me, those kind of things. He was a junior, a year later we hired him. Communication is key, all right? Separating yourself is key. I bet you, and I'm going to talk about the same thing when you apply for a job. If I'm behind the table like this, there's hundreds of students at your career fair, and they all just got resumes and they're handing them to you. I'll go back to my office, I'll have a stack of them like this. How many do you think emailed me? 2, 3, maybe, tops. Well, those 2 or 3, like that kid, really separated himself from everybody else who didn't send that email, right? It's quick, it's easy. I post a job on a Sunday. I'll have 100 applicants if it's a good job. I'll come into work on Monday morning, and before I go to review them, I'll look and see who sent me a message. I might get 4 or 5 out of 100. That's 95% of the people you can separate yourself from just by sending a quick email. Hey, this is James. I just applied for your account executive position. I've read the job description. I really feel like it aligns with my skills. I'd love the opportunity to discuss that with you further. That brief little interaction is going to get you looked at. It's going to get your resume looked at. If I got 100 resumes to go through, am I going to scroll through 100 resumes? Or am I going to start with the 5 that emailed me and really look at their resume instead of just skimming through it, right? Separate yourselves, little things. It's a quick email, but it goes a long way, all right? The other thing that you can do besides emailing who posted the job, and you're not always going to be able to email who posted the job, especially on LinkedIn. About half the time, maybe, who posted the job is listed. Now, you can really do a deep dive if you want and look at the company and find out who's in talent acquisition and send like a maybe email. That shows a lot of ambition. If that lands on the right desk, you're really going to get somebody's attention. And if you guys don't know LinkedIn, feel free to reach out to me at any point after this or in your interview process. I told you, I love it. I love doing this. So I'll walk you through how to do that. But that's something that you can really do to separate yourself. Another way to separate yourself and really start to land opportunities is through networking. Kind of talked about networking a little bit with at the career fairs, but there's really 2 primary ways that you can be networking. All right. The first is your in-person networking, your social circle, right? Your family, your friends, those kind of things. I get it. Like most of your conversations right now, particularly ones that you're having with adults, are usually probably centered around topics that you're comfortable with. baseball being ranked really high at that list, or other sports. What I'm going to challenge you to do is kind of get out of your comfort zone a little bit in terms of who you're speaking to and what you're speaking about, right? It's easy to talk to the uncle who's just going to talk about baseball all day, or talk about football, the whole time. What you want to do is talk to family members and acquaintances that maybe on the surface you don't have anything in common with. You don't know what they do for a living and how they may be able to further your career. So have like intentional conversations. One of the things that I like to ask people when I'm speaking to them for the first time is, what do you do for a living, right? I'm sure when you converse with adults, some of them are going to ask you, if they're not talking about baseball, a common question they're going to ask you is, what's your major, right? If they don't ask you, have a conversation with them, ask them what they do for a living. That's going to make the conversation, because it's already awkward, because it's not somebody you want to be talking to typically anyway. But let them control the conversation by starting to talk about themselves. People like to talk about themselves. It's going to get them a little bit more relaxed and make the conversation easier for both of you. Eventually it'll get around to you, and that's when you have to let people know what your major is and what you want to do. All right? That person that you're talking to could work in HR at a Comcast, and regardless of your major, they can open up doors for you. Maybe you're an accounting major and they're the controller of a small company, or their wife or husband is, and they can open doors for you. The older they are, the more experienced they are, the bigger their network is, the more they're going to be able to help you. Same thing, the premise I'm telling you, the earlier you start this, the bigger your network is going to be. All right? But people want to help you. They have to know how. So you have to have those conversations and let them know how they can help you. All right? So that's your in-person networking. The other form of networking is social media. We're going to talk about social media in 1 second as far as a networking tool. But before we talk about that, I just want to talk about it in general. Okay? Social media is a very powerful tool that can be used in your favor, but if it's not used properly, it can be weaponized against you. All right? So every one of your social medias, I know you're all on some form, probably multiple platforms. It needs to be pristine. Okay? No foul language, no middle fingers, no excessive partying, no polarizing political views, none of that. 95% of employers have admitted to looking at candidates' social media at some point during the hiring process. 95%. That's almost all of them, right? So when you're applying for jobs, people are going to be looking at your social media. And if you don't believe me, I've seen it happen. I'll give you an example, and it pertains to baseball, so hopefully this hits home for you guys. Like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, the team that won the Philadelphia Catholic League, their coach thought it'd be a good idea to retire and ride off into the sunset as a champion. So they needed to hire somebody new. The alumni opened up a search. They hired a former player. This guy got the job of his dreams, and he was relatively young. It was a really, really good job for him. Probably a dream job. Some alumni didn't like that hire, so they did a little digging. Didn't take a lot. About 5 or 10 years ago, he sent some tweets that were controversial. He was hired for his dream job on Wednesday. By Friday, he was fired for some old tweets. Don't let that be you. You all work too damn hard to lose an opportunity over something so foolish. So that's my little warning on social media. But the way that it can be used in your favor is mostly going to be through LinkedIn. Now I'm on everything. So if you want to kind of see what job opportunities are out there, all those kind of things, for me, 5-star hiring is on everything. But right now, if you can get your phones out, if you have them, and you can get that, just real quick, I want you guys, if you're on LinkedIn, who's on LinkedIn? That's a pretty decent number. All right, so for the guys that are on there, scan, and we can go back to that after you guys can. Good over here? All right, so for you guys that are on LinkedIn, I want you to bring that up and connect with me on LinkedIn, all right? But it's not just about me. It's about building your network. So I know, like my son's roughly your guys' age. I implore him to be more active on LinkedIn. He's not nearly active enough. So it's not good enough to just be on there, but be active. And you don't even have to post a whole lot, but show some type of activity, whether it's a like or a comment. As a recruiter, I can go on there, if I'm hiring an accounting position, and it's an entry-level accounting position, I can search by grad year 2024, and accounting majors, and I can see who recently graduated and who has that major or those experience, and I can send them messages, hey, I think I have an opportunity for you. But I might only get 200 of them a month for all of my jobs. So if I pull up your LinkedIn, I can see your activity. If you haven't been active in 2 years, I'm probably not going to send you that message because it's valuable to me. I only get 100 or 200, right? So I'm not going to waste it on somebody that's. I'm not going to waste that on somebody who's not active. So just like a little like or a comment. Excuse me. Follow your school, any alumni association associated with the school, professors in your major, mentors, things like that. That's how you can kind of just start to build a following. It's like any other social media presence. You'll build a following slowly over time, but that's kind of like a good little base to start to build out your network on. So those are kind of some of the things that we can do to help us land interviews, right? To separate ourselves. Now that we have the interview, let's talk about how we can prepare for that. First thing I want to talk about is your resume. I know this is technically before the interview, but we're going to talk about it now. So with the more traction AI is getting today, and especially the bigger companies, they're starting to use it. If your resume is not in a certain format, it'll reject it automatically. It'll never get seen. So a safe format to use for your resume is kind of like the paragraph style. Your information should be up top. For me, I like up top just your name, email, phone number. I don't like an address on there, not really for safety concerns or anything like that. So not even like city and state. I've seen employers disqualify candidates because they felt the commute was too far. It's a 45 commute, that's too far. Or they felt that this candidate may need to relocate and he's probably not going to want to do that for this role. That's not their decision to make. It shouldn't be anyway. It should be your decision to make if a 45-minute commute is too far. So if that information's not on there, you take that decision out of their hands, all right? And then the next thing you want to do, again, the resume is going to get looked at on average of 7 to 10 seconds. They fly through them. I know, I do it. Fly right through them, right? So don't make them go looking for the information that they want. They're entry-level roles that you're applying for right now. They want to know where you went to school, what your major was. That should be first. Education should be first. Then your relative work history, all right? And your athletic accomplishments should absolutely be on your resume. I know some old school thought was, that's not relevant. It absolutely is. And if you won things and you were a captain, put that on there. People want winners, people want champions, all right? Put that kind of stuff on there. When you're putting your relative work history, you want to quantify your accomplishments, okay? So, and I get it. A lot of you guys may not have had great experience, so it might be, retail or something like that, right? I worked with a lot of customers on a daily basis and closed out my drawer at the end of the night. Well, how many customers did you work with? How much money were you handling? Maybe you're like, I know a lot of marketing majors now help companies with their social media presence, right? I grew their social media presence. By how much? What kind of traffic did you increase to their site, right? You're going to do a couple things by quantifying your accomplishments. First, you're going to show your direct impact on that organization. The second thing is, it's going to put numbers on the page, right? If there's no numbers on here, if there's not any numbers on your resume, there's no reason for them to stop that very quick scroll. A number's going to, a number, a dollar sign, a percent sign, it's going to jump off the page. It's going to grab their attention. It's going to get them to stop. So you want to quantify your accomplishments. The last thing is saving. please, for the love of God, don't save your resume as resume 24 or something along those lines. It might be your only resume 24. They're going to have hundreds, if not thousands of them. And if they have to go back and find you, that's going to make it extremely difficult to do. So do, first name dot last name dot first name. If your name's John Smith or something, and you think that may be a problem, you want to put your jersey number in there or something, you could do that stuff, but it should be a little bit better than just resume 2024. I talked about having knowledge a little bit going into the career fair. It's the same thing in an interview. You have to research the companies that you're interviewing with. Has anyone here ever heard of J.G. Wentworth? Who's it? Right, so you've seen the commercials,
Yeah.
right? Like 877 Cash Now, right? All you guys saw that commercial, right? That's who I worked for 25 years. And I would sit in an interview and I would ask them, so what do you know about the company? And they would literally, I've had people do this, sing me the jingle, 877 Cash Now, or it's my money, use it when you want, right? Like, great, dude, you saw our commercial, but that doesn't tell me, that tells me you did zero research. You have no idea what we did. You're about a minute into the interview, and I've already disqualified you, because you didn't do anything. You did zero research at all. Now, conversely, if I ask a candidate, tell me a little bit about what we do, and he tells me you buy structured settlements, okay, now, you got my attention a little bit, and you give the person, the present value of their future cash. Wow. Now you really got my attention. That's a very detailed answer, and it probably took you at most 30 minutes on the website. So now you're a minute into the interview, and I'm strongly leaning on possibly giving you an offer, just because you did a little bit of research, right? So research the company, jump on their website, jump on their social media. If it's a bigger company and they were in the news recently, maybe that's a talking point. If you're on LinkedIn and you get an invite from James Grugan, who's going to interview you, jump on his LinkedIn and look at his profile, learn a little bit about him. Maybe he went to Westchester. Maybe he went to the school your parents went to. Maybe he played baseball. And you could find some kind of common ground. The other thing that does too, by the way, is, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but if you're on LinkedIn, it tells you who visited your page. So don't be stalking like exes on there or anything like that, because they're going to know. But if you're doing it for legitimate purposes, like as an interviewer, I want to see that. I want to see that the night before the interview, you were on my page researching. That shows that you're going to come in, you're going to be prepared. Now I'm looking forward to that interview for all the right reasons. And then you want to have questions ready for them. You have to have questions ready. They're going to give you that opportunity at the end of every interview to ask a couple questions. Have some good ones ready. I'll give you two good ones that I always like to ask them. The first one is ask them what they like about working at this company, or what they find most rewarding about it. Something in that realm. A couple reasons why I like that one. One is it gives them a chance to talk about themselves. So they're going to be relaxed. It's going to make the rest of the interview that much more enjoyable, and it's going to leave a favorable impression of you. You're going to seem like cooler to them because you let them talk about themselves. They're going to like that. The other thing it does is you have to remember in the interview process, you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, right? So when you ask that, if you ask somebody what they find rewarding about their job or why they want to work there, if they genuinely love what they do, they're going to be passionate about it, and it's going to come across. You're easily going to see that. But if they don't, if they just give you some bullshit that you just read on the company website, you're going to know that too, right? You're going to be, this dude don't even like working here. Why would I want to work here? Right? That's a red flag. So you can sort that out in an interview. That's a really strong question to ask. And then another question is, what would your goals be for me over the learning curve of maybe the first 3 months in this role, and then beyond that out the rest of the year? What would your goals be for me? Okay? The reason that's a really strong question is it shows that you're not afraid to have goals placed upon you. In fact, you're actually welcoming it. Like, what are you going to have me do? I want to know. I want to perform, right? And then the other thing, it's minor, but it could be a little psychological advantage. in order to answer the second part of that question, they have to put you in that role, and they have to put you in it out a year. So it shows that you want to be there a little bit, and in their mind, you're already in the role. They have to put you in there subconsciously to answer that question. So if it's really tight between you and another candidate, that may be just the slightest edge that gets pushed in your favor because they had to put you in that role, and subconsciously they already did that. So that's something that could push you over the edge. So you can have your own questions. I can't predict everything that's going to be asked of you on an interview, but we can talk about some generic things that you should be prepared for. I will tell you, if you go on my website, there's a PDF version of this presentation, and there's a whole section that focuses on very common interview questions that I would absolutely strongly recommend reading prior to a job interview, whether it's next week or in 4 years. Remember that, because it gives a lot of detail as far as common questions and what the purpose of the question is and what are some good answers. But we'll talk about a couple here. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I talked about that earlier, right, with career fairs. That's why you go to the career fair, so that you can start to perfect that. And then now you're answering this question, it's second nature, because you've done it 80 times at career fairs. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? It's a very common interview question. I got news for you. They don't really want to know what your strengths are. They have a pretty good idea at this point. They read your resume, they probably stalked your social media, you've had a phone interview, and now you're into the interview. So they have a pretty good idea of what you're about, what you're comprised of, what makes you tick. What they really want to know is how you articulate that, right? That's what they're really looking for there. Same thing with the weakness. It's not a trap question, it's not an I got you. What they want to know is some self-awareness. And not only that, but are you cognizant of it and how you've taken steps to correct it. You never in an interview want to give one-word answers, like to either one of those. What are your strengths? Time management. What are your weaknesses? For me, actually, ironically enough, it's time management. But either way, you don't want to give just that one-word answer and then make them pull it out of you why it's a strength or why it's a weakness. So you answer it, and then you follow up with details or examples. So it looks something like this, for me personally. Like time management is a weakness of mine. And when I started my own business, I recognized that you can't kind of effectively run a business and have poor time management skills. So now for me, my day starts the night before. Every night at the end of my night, I'm going to look at my calendar and give kind of like a little bit of an idea of what I have in front of me the next day. Then the first thing I do in the morning is pen and paper, write out my day. Well, like today, 7 o'clock, I got to be at Westchester, And if I don't have, 4:30 call at LinkedIn, and the times I don't have things to do, I'm giving myself tasks. So now my whole day's accounted for, all right? So that's how you would answer that question, and you can demonstrate that you took a weakness and at a minimum worked on it and potentially even turned it into a strength, all right? When I talked about your resume earlier, one of the things that I didn't touch on was you can feel free to borrow when you're doing your resume, especially now with like ChatGPT and all those kind of things. Like I talked about server jobs. You can put in there what's good resume bullet points for a server job, and it'll spit out some shit, and you'll think, damn, man, I did that. Like it'll make what you did, the mundane, day-to-day stuff. Somebody's going to be able to say it in a way that is better articulated than you can or even than I can. And it sounds really good, which is fine. The other thing is, like, depending on the job, if it's an accounting job or a sales job, you may want to tweak things, move some things in, move some things out. So your resume is a template, and you can borrow from different things. But you can't flat out steal, and you can't flat out make things up. All right? I've seen, like, people put their proficient in Excel, and then they get a job interview for a staff accountant role, and part of the interview process is they get an Excel proficiency test. Well, if you're lying, you're now embarrassing yourself at like phase 1 of the interview process. So if it's on your resume, you really better have done it, and you better be prepared to speak to it. I said that I can't predict the questions that they're going to ask of you. I can tell you that in almost every interview, you're going to be asked in some form, and it's going to typically be near the end of the interview, what separates you or why we should hire you, something along those lines. And if they don't ask it, they may, another way of asking kind of the same thing, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself? Okay? This part of the interview is literally put on a tee for you to knock this interview out of the park and just blow their socks off. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take all those skills that we talked about and you're going to put it into one compelling answer. What separates me, I've always separated myself. And these last 4 years have been the most intense internship that you can possibly have. I've increased an already strong work ethic. I've mastered my time management. I've become a better teammate. I've failed. I've overcome adversity. I've learned what it takes to win. But most importantly, these aren't skills that I just learned in the comfort of a classroom or jotted on a resume. They're battle-tested in real-life situations that I'm ready to bring to your organization and make an immediate impact. Right? That's a pretty strong argument for what you bring to the table. And it's going to be one of the last questions that they ask you, and it's going to leave a very strong impression. We're almost done, guys. One more baseball analogy, it's the bottom of the ninth. Coach probably always says, I know a lot of my coaches did, 27 outs in a game, right? 27? Yeah, 27 outs in a game, right? You have to get all 27, right? These are kind of like the last 3 outs. It's critical. You don't want to get to the goal line and not punch it in. You have to send a thank you email. I told you earlier, communication is key. You have to send a thank you email following an interview. As soon as you get back to your dorm, your apartment, wherever you're going, send a thank you email. Some hiring managers will exclude candidates that don't send that email. All right? Again, something short and brief. Thank you for your time. I really enjoyed learning about your company. I hope to hear from you soon. Send that all short and brief. If there's something that you talked about that grabbed your interest in the interview and you want to mention that, feel free to do that. You don't have to, but you have to send an email. All right? They're typically going to give you a time frame on when you should hear back. 1 week, 2 weeks, 5 to 7 days, whatever that time frame is. As that deadline approaches, send a follow-up email. You're not a bother, you're not a burden. It might be a test. They want to see how ambitious you are. All right? Hey, this is James. Just checking in. I'm still really interested in the position. Let me know if you have any updates. Again, short and brief. Just remind them, let them know you're there. All right? This last one sucks. Okay? Listen, I want you guys to win the Peace Act. I want you to bat 1,000. I want you to win every game you play this year. We all know that's not realistic, right? Those things aren't going to happen. You're not going to get an offer on every interview that you go to. As prepared as you may be, there's just sometimes they're going to go the other way. All right? You're going to get an email, hey, sorry, we decided to go in another direction. We'll keep your resume on file. Something like that. It hurts. It stings. Cool off a little bit. Decompress. Give yourself some time. But once the hurt goes away, send an email anyway. Hey, I understand. I really enjoyed learning about your company. I would love the opportunity to work there if possible in the future. I hope our paths can cross again at a time that's a little bit more mutually beneficial. Thank you for the time. Again, short, brief. That little email right there can open doors for you in rooms that you don't even know you're being mentioned. It's extremely professional and shows a high level of professionalism for somebody of your age to send an email like that. I've seen it happen. The company, maybe the guy they went with didn't work out, right? We talked about high turnover. 3 months from now, they're going to remember the candidate that sent that email. Maybe the company's in really high growth mode and they're adding that position again in 3 to 6 months. They're going to remember you. I've seen an instance where it might not even be the same company. I had a job posted, again, it was an accounting position, and somebody reached out and said, hey James, I just saw you had an accounting position posted not too long ago. Do you have any candidates you think would be a good fit for us? We have a similar position. Who's going to be at the top of that list? The person that sent that email, right? That's a huge separator. All right? Sports have given you the tools to have a high level of success. All right? A lot of people are afraid to take the tools that they have and be great. Don't be one of them. Go be great. Thank you. You guys does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
So me and a few other people in here are education majors, mainly physical education majors, and I
Okay.
think a lot of this relates and translates to how that would go as well to just like a typical business. Some things that stuck out to me were like the one question you said, like what would goals for me be in the first 3 months and then like to the first year. Do you think that like that's something that you would change depending on like your job?
For you, that's an excellent question.
That's a good thing.
That one, actually, I think the first one's a better question.
Yeah.
Because when I talked about you're interviewing them, if you said physical education, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in a school and that person interviewing hates that school, that might come across, right? But if they really love that school and they got school pride, passionate about it, that's going to come across there. For you, I would change that a little bit and ask them to just use the part of it where they said what's most rewarding about that. I actually asked that in an interview one time in a special ed type of role, and the woman cried. She was that passionate about helping special needs kids. She cried, so she loved that question. That question, I think, got me a job.
Cool.
In terms of like the importance of like a cover letter when applying, I know like you apply to your resume and stuff, but there are times where like, you want to apply or put in a cover letter.
Yeah, I actually,
About that.
I'm a big fan of cover letters. I think they can be really effective, especially in highly competitive positions, which tend to be, that's why I didn't mention it, I apologize for that. Those hot, like if any of you guys are like sports marketing, sports broadcasting, those type of roles, you'll see that those roles are highly, highly competitive. Just for example, like look at the numbers, like I know a lot of guys who play sports want to stay in sports, right? So that's something that you're going to kind of gravitate towards as a major. But I said earlier, only 7% of high school athletes play at the next level. That means there's 97% of kids that love sports, they played in high school, but for whatever reason are not playing at this level. They may want to stay close to it as well, right? So those type of jobs are highly, highly competitive. They don't need me, because when they put out a job in an hour, it's got 500 applicants. So a way that you could separate yourself there is a really strong cover letter to show your passion and why you would be a good fit for that organization.
I had a question about resumes. So like, I've made like maybe one or two like back in high school or like freshman year of college. Is there anything like on a resume that you would recommend you leave off that's like, kind of unimportant to draw attention to the more important aspects of it? Like,
That's going to be different for everybody. I'm leaning towards no, only because, like I said, you guys don't have a lot of experience. So it has to be at least a page. So you have to fill that. Now, if you had 17 jobs in high school, and some of them were like 2 weeks long, then you might want to try and consolidate that and figure it out. But maybe, again, that's why I said it's a template. You know, maybe one, you were a landscaper. And that to me is a role that you have to have a strong work ethic to go to, right? You're working all summer, it's hot, you're starting early. So if it's a sales role, I might want a landscaper because I know they're a grinder. If it's an accounting role, maybe I don't need that, but maybe you worked as a cashier at Wawa or something. That might be a little bit more transferable because you know you're dealing with your register and those kind of things. So just keep an open mind about it. But I want to be very quick to just dismiss something and say it's not transferable.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like teachers will tell you like everything you've done on there, and when you were talking about putting stuff at the top, like stuff that's more important, like your school and your major and like the relative stuff. I was just wondering if anything would end up getting kicked off the resume because of that.
It could, because you want to keep it at a page early on. The other thing I did mention, I'm glad you said that. I did mention that like your athletic achievements should be on there. They absolutely should be. Like, and if room permitting, as many as possible. Same thing goes for volunteer work that you may have done. Put that stuff in there. So what I would start to do is kind of keep keep it in your notes on your phone. But like, if you player of the week or player of the month or something like that, where you guys go to a cleanup at a park, put that stuff in your notes. So that if you're not updating your resume every time you do that, and you have to go update your resume, you have like a point of reference of things that you can add to it, of accolades that you've accomplished or things that you've done that are going to show value on paper. That it? Cool. Oh, yes, sir.
When researching for like a company, like not your company specifically, but like what kind of things would you look for? Like, as far as like, if I search up your company, what would you want to know that I'm looking up for?
What we do,
Yeah.
that's the basic one, is what we do. And this is why it's important. Because you might think you know what we do, but sometimes I ask, like, some of you guys said you recognize J.G. Wentworth. I'm just going to use an example here. Do you know who J.G. Wentworth is? You ever? What do they do?
Well, I just know commercials.
Right, okay. Do you have a guess on what they do?
Not really.
And does anybody have a guess on what they think that they do? Nothing? You saw the commercials 9,000 times. You can't throw a guess out there? Anyway, the point is, the guesses are usually wrong. All right, like I did it one time at 2 schools ago, and the guy said he thought it was for reparations. He thought we were paying reparations. Another dude says, because you won the lottery or something, which is kind of close. But the point is, you don't know from a commercial, but if you do a little bit of research, it's really easy to find out what they do. Like if I were to ask me for my company, I would want you at a minimum to say you're a stamping agency. You help people, find jobs or something along those lines. Can we get a picture?
Absolutely.
That's it. So, guys, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.